I think every big event we look forward to risks being followed by a bit of a dip. And I've been wondering, is early retirement such a powerful idea for people that it creates unrealistic expectations? Hi, this is Simon from Salary to Side Hustle. Everyone focuses on the run up to early retirement, but today let's look at the immediate period afterwards. There's that phrase, never meet your heroes, and early retirement was definitely my hero for the years leading up to it. So the question now is, what's it actually like now that I'm here? A peak followed by a dip is a really well-known thing, and it's usually called the hype curve, and you can see one here on the image. There's an early peak, and then a slump, and then a more or less gradual building back to some kind of new normal, which then is typically shown as a plateau. And I wanted to look at whether this is relevant to early retirement, and then also to have a think about where I am on the curve, because I've certainly moved along it in the 4 months since I've been retired. I first hopped onto the early retirement hype curve when I found out about the FIRE movement, which is financial independence, retire early. It's all over YouTube and the rest of the internet as well. And it's a goal where you generate enough resources so that you no longer have to work, or at least you no longer have to work in the type of job that you don't want to work in. So it's a way of finding freedom. And given I was feeling trapped in a corporate role, I thought this seemed like the answer to my life's main challenge, which was how to escape that corporate job. So I started planning, and early retirement was looking possible based on the figures. And I now had my goal, and I could start anticipating that escape. And that escape, as you can imagine, was the peak of this hype curve. And as you can see from the image, that escape plan took me from 2021 to 2025. And all the time, my excitement was building up, along with some nervousness at the prospect of handing in my notice and finally removing the shackles of my actually what was perfectly decent job, but just didn't fit me. So it's definitely turning into my personal peak of inflated expectations. But in any way, the plan worked, and in September 2025, when I was 55, 55 and a half to be precise, I left that corporate role behind and began early retirement. And despite it being autumn in the UK, the first 3 months were actually really great. I was enjoying the relief of not having to worry about work, that Sunday evening feeling that everybody knows oh too well, and then trying some new things. I'd found a new sport to try, and it was all going really well. Then in early December, for no particular reason that I could identify immediately, I started feeling a little purposeless. I don't know if it's just the elapsed time, or really just whether human nature means you kind of from a high you end up going into a bit of a low. So that started for me in December, and it continued into January. It wasn't really a day to day, not enjoying my life. It was more of a longer term. What am I going to do with it? Where's my purpose? And maybe that's missing the point of retirement, but it's a thought that I often come back to. And interestingly, this YouTube channel has followed the same curve. It started off in September as well, and then kind of just went nuts through November, and ended up being monetized in a much quicker time than I thought. And really, because of that, I'd kind of had this euphoria, and then sort of came down the other side. And I'm now, as this video is evidence, I'm also building back from kind of that dip after the initial success of this channel. So it's interesting that those two things parallel each other. And I think what was behind it was I started skipping some of my good habits. I'd got in the habit of getting up uh, early, and then every now and again I was just having a bit of a lie-in, and that started getting a bit addictive. Maybe it was the weather. It's been raining in the UK solidly for about the last 6 weeks. Or maybe it was just things like I wasn't going out as regularly to do exercise, and those things kind of affect me over time. And I wasn't really building on those initial 3 months, thinking, okay, here we go. We've got a shape of retirement now, and now let's kind of flesh it out a bit more. And I guess it's important to remember wherever you go, you take yourself with you. If you emigrate or go and move somewhere else, become a digital nomad, it does change some of your life, but the very core of your life, you are still there. There's only so much you can change, and I think that's part of why there are unrealistic expectations when you get to that peak, because you kind of expect everything to change, and some things just won't, because you are you, and by the time you get to 55, quite a lot of that is very well ingrained and established. I was also surprised at how quickly the time is going. Um, I'm 4 and a bit months in now, and if I do the maths on life expectancy, it's now a small percentage of my entire retirement, and it's whizzed by. So that's quite interesting as well. And I put that down to sometimes not having the variety that used to be the case, because there's less to remember if all your days are fairly similar. And so looking back, there's not really anything to focus on, and it makes time seem like it's going really quickly. And occasionally I was left thinking, is this the rest of my life? It's a perfectly good life, but it kind of makes me think, okay, what next? It feels like we should be having some goals. So I think I'm just a very goal oriented person. So that was some of my December and January thinking. And then as we got into the second half of January, things started to stabilize for me a bit and improve. And I can't really pinpoint the actual moment of change. And I guess it was probably a combination of little things. I started re-establishing good habits, getting up a bit more reliably, and it's just a good way to start the day. I'd returned to pickleball, which is the new sport I took up, and I was getting into my running again. I'd had a bit of an Achilles injury that prevented me running regularly, but that's now behind me, and I'm getting into more of the running scene. And it's a really social scene where I'm a member of a running club, and that's a good part of my social life. And I've also focused a bit more on the freedom than looking for purpose, and just being grateful for the fact that I can pretty much do whatever I like in my days within reason. And I'd also been on a fairly long holiday to see my son, who's spending a year out in Australia. And there was an element of post holiday blues getting back from that, not to mention jet lag. And I think partly it was the acceptance that there are ups and downs. This is not some kind of promised land where life is sweet and then you die. There's going to be ups and downs as you go. And it's just important to understand that and accept it, and take them in your stride, and know that both the ups and the downs are temporary. So that period has taken me through late Jan and a bit into February, and I'm certainly not at the plateau yet. There's more to do to fill out my retirement, to get that sense of enjoyment that I want from it, and there's the acceptance that permanent happiness isn't realistic. So if you look at that plateau, it's shown as a straight line, and clearly it's not going to be. There's going to be ups and downs, and there'll be varying amplitudes. Some of them will be really high highs, and some of them will be really low lows as you go. But it's important to understand that you will regress to the norm, as it were, and get back to that plateau. So it won't be a straight line, but it will be a new normal that you can get used to, and get some satisfaction from. So what have I learned over the past 4 months? I think early retirement has a really hard job living up to the expectations placed on it. I think anything would. It is a massive focus for a lot of people, and it is amazing, but it's not going to fix your entire life. The day after work has challenges too. And you'll probably have a post excitement slump, because that's just human nature. You kind of go up, and then there's a corresponding coming down. It's not as deep by any means, or it hasn't been for me, as the excitement, but you don't maintain that kind of that honeymoon period. It's likely to be temporary as well, the slump, and it's a completely natural thing. But you will find a new normal for yourself. You'll find and you'll make that new normal. But for me, I'm still happier than when I was in my corporate job. I'm a lot happier. I'm much more light-hearted, and there's just less to worry about. And for me, that was the main thing. It was largely a stress-based thing that made me want to quit my job anyway. So for me, that has really worked out. Are you retired yet? What's been your experience so far? Roller coaster, or pure consistent joy? Or I guess somewhere in between. Be really keen to know in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this video or found it in any way useful, please do like and subscribe. It really helps grow the channel and get this content out to more people. But this has been Simon from Salary to Side Hustle. Bye for now.